Good afternoon. Welcome to the 24th of August 2022 Ordinary Council meeting. Just running through the preliminaries, just want to remind anybody who is in the gallery that the exits out of the building are the way that you came in the event of an emergency, and please directly go to that place and meet at the front. Just to also remind councillors that we keep our mobile phones turned off, and if you are on emergency standby, can you please put it on vibrate and leave it on your desk? Otherwise, please have mobile phones off the desk. I'd like to acknowledge the Ballardong Noongar people, the custodians, traditional custodians of the land where we meet today, and the Yuin and Whadjuk people who are traditional custodians of the respective lands within the Shire of Toodyay. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Moving to the records of attendance, I have not received any apologies and all councillors are present. We do have online Councillor Hart, Councillor Wrench and Councillor McCormick. Other councillors are attending in chambers. I've not received any approved leave of absence or applications for a leave of absence, and I'll just check with the CEO that's the case.
None received, thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillors, do we have any disclosures of interest? No? Thanks, Councillor Hart. Then we'll move to public question time. We have one person in attendance in the gallery. Do you wish to ask any questions of council? Thank you. We'll move forward then to the confirmation of minutes. The ordinary meetings of council held on the 27th of July 2022. That the unconfirmed minutes be confirmed. Do I have a mover?
Councillor Jury would like to.
One moment.
Councillor Jury would like to.
Councillor Jury, I believe Councillor Pearce has moved. Councillor Jury, yes.
Thank you, Madam President. In the minutes of 27th of July, 9.1.3, 3 to 6 dogs, lot 106 Hoddywell. Point 1C, there was to be an amendment, an alternate motion. Add the following to this condition: ensuring that the hair under the collar is shaved to enable the collar to work effectively.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pearce, do you accept that?
I do.
Right, thank you. Councillors, all in favour of passing the unconfirmed minutes with the following amendment? Councillors online, can I have a show of hands? Councillor Wrench, is that a plus or a minus? I've just lost her, so that is 6-0 at the moment.
7-1.
Oh, 7-1, my apologies. The special meeting of council held on the 10th of August. Do we have a mover, please, for the unconfirmed minutes? Councillor Rusin, thank you. Do I have any objections or?
It's just that situation where I wasn't at that meeting, so I can't vote for it.
Yes, yep, I understand I'm in the same position. Councillors, all in favour of moving the minutes of the special council meeting of the 10th of August? That's 5-2-3.
Madam President, you will need a seconder because you've received objections.
Oh, of course, my due apology. Been on holiday a bit too long. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jury? All in favour again? Right. So that's 5-2. I'm not quite sure whether we have Councillor Wrench with us in any capacity or whether...
Councillor Wrench is offline at the moment,
Right,
so
then we'll...
she can't be considered present at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Maria, can you please note that Councillor Wrench is absent from the meeting at the moment? And we'll take that as 5-2. 2 against. So there was...
Councillor Wrench is offline, but in the other one we said it's 7-1, but she hasn't voted. So how do you record that?
Then it has to... Well, yeah,
She hadn't voted when you took the vote, so we didn't... She was on screen still.
she was still on the screen, but she didn't vote. So she was still present technically in the meeting. So we cannot accept that, and she didn't respond when requested. Councillor, we are obligated to vote under the Act, either for or against.
I'm just moving on to the next one, the special meeting. You're not voting for it, I'm not voting for it, and Councillor Wrench can't vote for it,
She can't.
so it can't be whatever you said it was.
Councillor Wrench is no longer online, so it was only you and I who had voted against on the grounds that, 5-2. Thank you. Councillors, we have the agenda briefing held on the 17th of August 2022 and ask that the notes of the agenda briefing held be received. Is there a mover? We've not... Oh. The notes have not been received? May I just seek clarification? Councillors, they have been received and are on the hub, so we'll return to that. Do I have a mover?
Councillor Wrench is back.
Thank you. Maria, can you please record her return? Are there any questions or clarifications with regard to the agenda briefing?
So, Madam President, was Councillor Jury who moved them, is that correct?
Yes, Councillor Jury has moved. All in favour? Councillor Jury, I can't see your hand. Have you got your hand up to receive the... Sorry, Councillor Wrench. Thank you. Right. That's carried 8-0. As we've not received any petitions, deputations, presentations or submissions, we will move through to the first item of business, which is 9.1.1. Draft Local Planning Policy, DAMS. The officer's recommendation is on page 6. Now, I believe the Manager of Development and Regulation, Mr DeVos, has an alternate, or is it an amendment?
We actually made some amendments to the policy, which is now included as the attached policy, so it should be good to go. Plus, we've made all of the required grammatical and textual changes as part of that uploaded policy, so it should be good to go.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for the policy, please? The officer's recommendation. Councillor McCormick, thank you. Are there any questions or clarifications with regard to this item? Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, the officer's resolution, or recommendation is that in part 2, that we adopt the local planning policy dams with modification. Attachment 1 with modification. So what's the modification that needs to be made?
Thank you, councillor. Those modifications, you have a list
So
of
they
those?
have been incorporated into the attachment. That's, so basically that terminology there is straight from the regulation. So we either adopt as is, adopt with modification, and so we've modified it. We've already advertised it, yes.
Sorry, so we're not actually voting, adopting them with any further modification?
Well, yes, we are, because we've made modifications subsequent to the advertising process.
Yes, but we're not, but no, this says we're going to adopt them as per attachment 1 with modification.
Yes,
So,
I see what you're getting
yeah,
at.
so we're not actually going to adopt them with modification. We're not going to go and adopt and modify them any further.
I guess my way of looking at it is we advertised the policy,
Yeah.
which is version 1. We've now gone and modified the policy, which is version 2, and which is the one which council is approving.
Yeah.
So that's the policy with modification.
No, but it's not attachment 1 with modification, is it?
Well, yes, it is, because I've re-uploaded the attachment now to include those modifications.
Would it not be attachment 1 version 2?
I think the council would be able to approve this just by saying as per attachment 1, and that should be sufficient.
Thank you.
Is that an amendment to the...
So, councillor, you're suggesting that the word with modification be removed. Councillor McCormick, would you accept that modification?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or clarifications to raise on this item? Are there any objections? In which case this item is carried under Standing Order 9.380. Moving to item 9.1.2, draft dogs policy. The officer's recommendation is on page 9. Just clarifying again with Mr De Vos. Certainly, just bear with us for one moment. There is some alterations that will be added to this.
Okay, so we are adding a condition to the, which would be that sterilisation, it would be that sterilisation status is to be compliant with the current state government legislation.
One moment, I'll just check that Maria has that in. Right. Thank you.
We've also amended the spelling of the word sterilisation in the document. And we have changed the reference to the fees, not to give a dollar amount, but to link it back to the approved schedule of fees and charges at the time.
Thank you. Are there any further amendments? No.
I do apologise about this. I had sent them all through. I wasn't preparing to go through them today.
No,
so-
that's okay. Best probably we just have them in hard copy
Yeah,
prior to
I
the
will.
meeting, makes it easier. Thank you. So, yes, councillor Pearce?
I've just got a question. With the fees, we did say that according to the schedule of fees, so in the schedule of fees, we have a application fee plus an inspection fee when the rangers go out. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's what that comprises of. And may I just also add, you've reminded me of another discussion that we've had, Councillor Pearce, where you've talked about any retrospective fee application. Now, that's a council fee that isn't yet applied, but could be considered by council in future iterations of the fees and charges, if you want to consider it.
Thank you. So what you're saying is we need to perhaps look at the fees and charges at a later date to include a retrospective fee.
Yeah, so unlike planning where we have the regulations which stipulate retrospective applications are charged 3 times the amount, there's no statutory fee equivalent under the Dog Act, but council has the option to have a look at applying a similar sort of penalty if it chooses to in the future.
Thank you. Councillors, I need a mover for the officer's recommendation. Councillor McCormick, thank you. Any further questions or clarifications? Any objections? Which case this item has been adopted by Standing Order 9.3 unanimously 8-0. Moving to item 9.1.3, lot sub 101 Beaufort Street, 3 to 6 dog application. It is a SAT Schedule 31 reconsideration. The officer's recommendation is on page 12.
Madam President, if I may draw your attention to the addition that's on the screen right now, that has been made to the officer's recommendation. Would you like it read out?
Yes, please.
So Part E, an addition to the officer's recommendation. Part E is sterilisation status to be compliant with the current state government legislation. And an advice note has been added which says the applicant is advised to sterilise the 2 dogs within 21 days of the date of this approval. The Shire of 2J requests that it be provided with proof of sterilisation of the animals within this time. In the future, pending the gazettal of the amendments to the Dog Act developed to reduce instances of puppy farming, the requirement to have the animals sterilised will be mandatory. This is reflected in the condition above.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I add a further condition with regards, so applicants are to provide proof of the, what's the word? Not the sterilisation,
No,
the
Proof, what is the
therapy, yes.
proof
Written-
from
written-
the
Yes.
provider of the service
Yes,
of the dog's therapy
within
po-
21 days.
position within 21 days.
Yep, and then the third condition will be,
Status, I think the word was, we said, the therapy dog's
Yes.
status.
and then the final condition would be that the approval will be revoked if this evidence is not provided within the required time.
Yep. Maria, may I just slightly alter that? The applicant to provide proof of the dog's therapy status from its provider within 21 days. No, that doesn't read correctly. Somebody can assist me with this sentence structure. It is the provider, the dogs are providing a therapy role for a particular institution. We are requesting that institution verify the dog's status. So if somebody would, applicant to provide proof. No, it's not service proof.
From the institution.
From the institution, the dog provides the, no, somebody else better do it.
Could it not be the institution validates the
Dogs.
the use of the dog?
Yes, the institution validates the role of the dog's therapy status.
Yep.
Madam President, would you perhaps say validating the dog's therapy role?
Yes? Quite happy to change that role.
I've just got a question. Within 21 days of approval of this, or what's the within 20 days?
Yeah, of the date of approval.
Thank you, councillor. Right. For those online who may have the old agenda in front of them, there are 3 points that have been added. A point E, sterilisation status to be compliant with the current state government legislation. F, applicant to provide proof from the institution validating the dog's therapy role within 21 days of the date of this approval. G, approval to be revoked if this evidence is not provided in the required time. And an advice note, the applicant is advised to sterilise the 2 dogs within 21 days of the date of this approval. The Shire of 2J requests that it be provided with proof of sterilisation of the animals within this time. In the future, pending the gazettal of the amendments to the Dog Act developed to reduce instances of puppy farming, the requirement to have the animals sterilised will be mandatory. This is reflected in the condition above. That is the addition as it stands. Councillor Pearce.
Can we just go back to where condition E, the sterilisation? At the moment, sterilisation as per the government requirements is not mandatory. So to me, that would give the applicant a loophole, even though they're advised to have the dog sterilised. To me, at the moment, they don't have to have dogs sterilised, so I'm not sure of the advisability of putting that clause in.
Mr De Vos, would you care to respond?
Yeah, so this one, I think I've said it's a difficult one because we're looking at it under, so it's an application under the Dog Act, however, it's raised issues under the Planning and Development Act because by, well, we could actually save it and just say, rather than talking about the sterilisation, we just say the animals are not to be bred, and that will actually make that point without actually stipulating the sterilisation. Do you agree?
Yes, I do, but that's very difficult to make sure that there is compliance in that case.
Well, I disagree because it's a, no, actually, no, you're, this is a headache, this one.
I would like to say that in that number E, that as per the mediation with the SAT, the applicants have agreed to have the dogs sterilised. Would that be acceptable?
Yep.
So you're proposing then to change point E to say, in accordance with the mediation undertaken with the State Administrative Tribunal,
Yep.
the applicants agree to have the dogs sterilised.
The only thing there though, CEO, is we didn't actually get to a point of mediation. We had a directions hearing and it was just agreed, yes, this is what they would do. So it wasn't a mediated outcome at the time.
So in accordance with the directions hearing
I would do
with
that.
the state,
Yeah.
so take out undertake it, yeah. The applicants agree to have the dogs sterilised.
Yep. I don't see there being a problem leaving that other item about that dogs are to be sterilised in accordance with state legislation, because then that would be triggered when the legislation gets changed. So it's not going to.
Yes, I'd agree with that, Councillor.
Could I just modify number E within 21 days of approval, so there is a time there.
Yeah, I'd suggest, I'd agree with that and take the advice note out altogether.
All right. Well, it's funny you say that because Councillor Ruthven has just come from training and said stay away from advice notes. So.
Yeah, I did the DAP training yesterday and the recommendation is don't use advice notes. Make sure it's included in the
Councillor
resolution.
Right, thank you, councillors. I'd like a mover, please, for...
Could we just read the 3 extra bits there now so everyone, even online, can understand?
Just for those online, we have now changed E to read, in accordance with the directions hearing with the State Administrative Tribunal, the applicants agree to have the dogs sterilised within 21 days of this date of approval. F remains the same, applicant to provide proof from the institution validating the dog's therapy role within 21 days of the date of this approval. And G, approval to be revoked if this evidence is not provided in the required time. We've removed the advice note.
Also, in that last one, if the approval to be revoked if the evidence is not provided and proof of sterilisation is not provided.
Councillor, do you think that's perhaps overkill? As the E does state, the applicants agree to have the dog sterilised within 21 days of the date of approval. They're incumbent to provide evidence of that? Is that my understanding, Mr De Vos?
That's fine. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, councillors, you can see the resolution before you now. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Any further questions or clarifications? Councillor Ruthven?
We discussed this back in April, and at the time, there was no registration of assistance dogs and no formal definition of assistance dogs. Has that situation changed since then? Do we know?
No, but it's in line with our policy that we are recognising assistance dogs, so we need to link it somehow that there's got to be some kind of official. It doesn't have to be a registration, but a letter from the body saying, yes, we recognise that these 2 dogs are being used for therapy purposes. We acknowledge that, and that would be sufficient evidence for us.
Isn't that very subjective?
Well, we do need it for this application, though.
But, yeah, I'm thinking, what validity does that letter have?
Well, what other evidence are we able to obtain?
I don't know.
And this it was a valid recommendation that was put forward by, I think Councillor Madachi raised it, and our policy, which has just been adopted, specifically references that we need to have, if people are having more than 2 dogs, there has to be a nexus between the additional number and the therapy dogs. So how do we prove the therapy dogs? Are we just going to take it on hearsay from an applicant saying, yes, we use these dogs for therapy, or do we need to have some more concrete evidence in place to support that?
In that case, I'd like an amendment to the one, sorry, Maria. Okay, point F, application to provide proof from the institution validating the dog's therapy role, to include the frequency and duration, to give a little bit more information.
Yes, that would be acceptable.
I'd agree with that because a one-off visit per year is would be insufficient.
No, I appreciate that because I actually did include frequency initially, and we've omitted that when we put it in this time.
Yep.
Also, it was of concern to put it in as that was raised in the original application, that in fact the additional use was for therapy dogs. Right, thank you. Any further questions or clarifications?
Yes. So now we've put that particular clause in, there's nothing to stop the institution saying they're only going to do it once a year.
No, there's not. But then I suppose it comes back to us having to do the best we can with the application as it stands at the moment. In future, perhaps we need to put some sort of further definition into what constitutes a reasonable expectation of a therapy dog. I can't see that there is much scope, possibly. Councillor, Mr DeVos, is there scope to include a minimum requirement for a therapy dog?
Council could put a number on it and say once a month, or would be an acceptable amount? I don't know. It's never really come up, so...
Got no particular opinion, but if you leave it open like that...
No, I agree.
No,
I agree. I mean, yeah, you could say...
I'd suggest we need feedback from the institution where this occurs.
But it's within the body of the officer's recommendation for approval, so therefore it needs to be within the body of that recommendation. That's my understanding. You can't retrospectively make a decision once the recommendation has been approved or rejected.
I'm not sure, particularly under the Dog Act, what we can and can't do. I know that under the Planning Act we could do an amended approval. So My idea on this one is, obviously it's a novel situation that we find ourselves in, and we're kind of feeling our way a bit with brand new policy structure as well. My personal recommendation would be to see this not be held up. We can follow the progress of how the policy is performing over the next 12 months or sooner. If it's becoming a problem, we can always bring it back to council and make a modification to the policy if we need to.
It's possible one word could actually change that if you... A word like regular, of course, is quite subjective, but perhaps...
I do think you need to sort of have a word there that says what is considered acceptable as far as the frequency. I'm not sure what the word is, but regular is subjective, but maybe numerous or something to that effect.
I think then you're looking at needing to quantify a minimum amount. And you could set an arbitrary figure of 4 visits a year or something like that. Is that acceptable? Just 6?
I don't think you can actually set an arbitrary, sorry, Madam President, I'm not sure that you can set an arbitrary figure without a rationale for that figure. It's not in our policy. I'm just thinking that if the applicant chooses to go back to the SAT, then we would have to have a reason for backing up the decision that
True.
council has made. So setting an arbitrary amount,
Now, yeah, okay.
I think would not stand us in good stead.
Councillor Jury?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to say, with the nursing homes and the institutions, they do have the dogs on a weekly basis, and there are times when they cannot have the dogs. Like during COVID, if people are sick, they can't have them. So it's really hard to say, okay, it has to be 3 times a week or 4 times a month, something like that. So it's something to take into consideration. Thank you.
I have another question.
Councillor Ruthin.
Thank you. Looking at the policy that we've just adopted, we have headings working dog, which is farm dog, or assisted living dog. These are not assisted living dogs. Or compassionate, which is fostered, or family, where it can be demonstrated that the owner can no longer care for a family pet. So assistance dogs don't really come under our policy.
Would it come under on the grounds of working dogs?
No.
Because it's got a role?
No. A working dog is a dog that lives with the person who needs the assistance, like lets them know that the phone's ringing and, all of this sort of thing.
No, but farm dogs are working dogs as well.
Well, they have a job to do.
Councillor Jury?
I believe that they are assistance dogs, because when you take them into the nursing homes and places of therapy, the people in there really respond to the dogs, and it is good for their mental and physical being to have those dogs in there. So,
Councillor, we are slipping into debate here.
sorry.
Just letting you know, thank you. We have this motion on the table. We do need to come to an agreement over section F. The only suggestion that I have, and if anyone's got a better one, by all means, would be to say applicant to approve proof from the institution validating the significance of the dog's therapy role. I don't know whether that really adds anything to it, because it's not really, there's no remedy should the significance be considered minimal?
And I suggest we take out the frequency thing, but add in that if the dog ceases to be used, the thing lapses. If the institution the dog's no longer visiting the institution, that approval lapses.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Puts the onus back on the owner to keep using the dogs
Yes,
in
I
the
agree.
assistance role. Yeah.
Include the frequency. Any wordsmiths amongst us that feels that could... How did you actually state it initially?
Okay, look, I just put applicant to provide proof from the institution following validating the dog therapy role,
Yeah.
and the owner to advise the Shire of the dogs no longer continuing in that role. Something like that. Immediately. So, yeah.
To advise the Shire.
I would suggest adding another point, so underneath that one, so applicant to provide proof from the institution validating the dog's therapy role within 21 days of the date of this approval, and then G, to be if the dog ceases, or the dogs cease to carry out this role, the effect of this approval is lapses.
Thank you very much, Madam CEO. Nice and concise. So this will be carried through into the body of the officer's recommendation as soon as Maria has an opportunity.
Can I shove in my 2 cents, please?
Certainly, Councillor Hart.
Suggest within 1 month of ceasing to be such a dog.
One month might be limiting in a pandemic.
3 months, 6 months?
Who's the reference by?
May I suggest putting within 3 months of cessation, just to close off that sentence?
Oh, that's on the...
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Right, thank you. This ever-evolving resolution now has added a point G. If the dogs cease to carry out this role, the effect of this approval lapses within 3 months of cessation. Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Madam President. May I have clarification, please? If the dogs have been therapy dogs for 5 years, 6 years or so, and then no longer are able to do it because of arthritis, medical things, or because they are no longer needed in that capacity, do the owners then give them up after having them sterilised and kept them for all that time, please?
I think perhaps we may be getting far-reaching here. That is a possibility that they can come back and speak to planning about that matter, and that can be revisited. We can't cover every eventuality.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Right, we have this motion on the table. We have a mover. Are there any further questions or clarifications? Are there any objections? Councillor Ruthven? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce? Councillor McCormick, would you wish to speak to the substantive motion with the amendments as prescribed?
Thanks.
Councillor Ruthven?
Thank you. This is an emotive issue, I understand that, but there is a difference between an assistance dog and a therapy dog. And I'll just read this to you. Assistance dogs are considered a medical aid specifically trained to assist a person with visible and non-visible disabilities. They are given additional permissions and protections under the law than pet dogs. Therapy dogs are pets, and while they may offer therapeutic support, are not considered a medical necessity. And then from Health Direct, a government website in Australia, assistance dogs are working animals that are specifically trained to help people who are living with physical disabilities to move around, to do everyday activities and tasks, and to be more independent. I don't think these dogs are therapy dogs, and according to that definition, they are pets that offer some therapeutic support. I don't support 4 dogs.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pearce?
I also do object to this resolution. Our policy clearly states that there must be a reason given why you need 4 dogs. Initially, in the application, it was because they wanted to breed and to be used as therapy dogs. There was a directions hearing, and it has come back to us that the applicants have agreed to sterilise the dogs. That was not my understanding, that when council refused this application, that we refused it on the grounds that the dogs were not sterilised. As the government policies at the stage, there is no mandatory sterilisation. I do not believe that, I don't support having 4 dogs without a valid reason.
Are there any further speakers for or against? I would like to speak. I would also... Who? Oh, Councillor McCormick, please go ahead.
I agree with Councillor Ruthven that with respect to applications for more than 2 dogs, or 4 dogs, or 3, that unless they're working dogs with livestock, I would continue to vote no.
I have some difficulty with this, simply because the initial application came through before the dogs policy was passed. Under that standard, their application was based on the grounds of requiring the 2 extra dogs as therapy dogs, and that they were therapy dogs, and also they raised at the time that they wished to breed from them. That has been since resolved with the agreement at the directions hearing of accepting sterilisation, but today we have now endorsed the new dog policy, where we are quite clear and quite distinct in what we donate as the exceptions for more than 2 dogs. The problem is we are, at this point in time, in the middle of a SAT hearing with this item, and it will certainly be taken on board that this application came prior to the dog policy being endorsed. Therefore, I will accept it with these conditions. However, if those conditions are not upheld, I would have no hesitation to expect them to conform to the policy as it stands. Any further speaker? Councillor Hart, thank you.
Thank you. I'm persuaded by Councillor Madachi's observations about the timings involved in all this, and I'm also conscious of the involvement of SAT in this. So I'm inclined to accept the officer's recommendation as it is now on the table.
Thank you. If nobody else wishes to speak, I'll give the right of reply to Councillor McCormick.
No, thanks.
In which case I'll put it to the vote. All in favour of the officer's recommendation as it stands on the table? Five. Thank you. That was carried 5-3. All against? Show of hands, please. That is Councillor Ruthin, Councillor Pearce and Councillor McCormick. Moving to item 9.1.4. Lot 3, Stirling Terrace 2J, proposed external window changes and outbuilding carport. The officer's recommendation is on page 17.
Madam President, there is an amended officer's recommendation that has been put on the screen.
Thank you. Right, the amended officer's recommendation and has been put forward. The screen is quite lengthy, so I will read it quickly for those online that do not have access to it. That Council, pursuant to clause 68(2)(b) of the deemed provisions of the local planning schemes, approves the application for development approval for an outbuilding carport and external window changes at Lot 3 Stirling Terrace 2J, subject to the following conditions. A, the development hereby permitted must be commenced within 2 years from the date of this decision letter. B, the development hereby permitted taking place in accordance with the approved plans. C, all reconstruction of brickwork and render shall be carried out in a like-for-like manner that matches existing materials, profiles and finishes. D, an archival record is to be made of the building to be demolished and submitted to the local government for approval prior to the issue of a building permit and shall include I, digital photographs taken of the building to include a general overall photo of the building, photos of all elevations and photos of any special architectural features. E, the stormwater shall be discharged in a manner so there is no discharge onto the adjoining properties to the satisfaction of the local government. and we have an advice note. So I will ask the manager, does he believe in hindsight we will retain this advice note, or do you feel in this case it should remain?
I think we can make it a condition. I think it's important that the applicant does liaise with the Shire of 2J and the Heritage Council to ensure that the materials are appropriate.
So the applicant will now be a condition and the word advice note removed.
Yep.
And thank you. So the applicant is to liaise with the Shire of 2J and or the Heritage Council of Western Australia to ensure that the brickwork and rendering being used are appropriate in order to meet the requirements of condition C.
So you can take out to make the... Oh, no, you would put that. That's fine. Yep.
And I'm just waiting, right, and G,
That can be an advice note, but...
the Shire of 2J will be custodians of the Heritage Archive. However, copies of the digital photos shall also be forwarded to the Heritage Council of WA, of Western Australia. That's the amended officer's recommendation on the table. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Ruthin. Any questions or clarifications? Any objections? In which case this item is carried 8-0. Moving to item 9.1.5, lot 120, Whitfield Road, Dumbarton, development approval where development has commenced, second-hand transportable single dwelling. The officer's recommendation is on page 21. Mr De Vos, was there any further amendments
Hang on, I'll just watch what's happening. That's right.
pending for this item? Can I give you a couple?
Yes, there are.
All right, thank you.
Can we recommend that condition 4 be amended to now say the structure must be modified to include a 20-degree roof pitch. The applicant is to supply engineering drawings to the satisfaction of the Shire of 2J demonstrating a modified roof pitch of 20 degrees to be approved prior to the issuing of a building permit and within 21 days of the date of this approval. Yes, I
Would you care to repeat that? Maria has only just caught up with this.
Sorry.
And just ensure that it is as you wish it.
Yes, so it's modifying condition 4, which should now read, the structure must be modified to include a 20-degree roof pitch. The applicant is to supply engineering drawings to the satisfaction of the Shire of 2J, demonstrating a modified roof pitch of 20 degrees. And to be approved... to be approved prior to the issuing of a building permit and within 21 days of the date of this approval.
That is now on screen. Is that to your satisfaction, that item?
Yes, and there is an additional condition that I've been requested to add, which is, request the CEO to direct the administration to issue the maximum fine of $500 per offence committed pursuant to Regulation 42 of the Planning and Development Regulations 2009 to the applicant for breaching Section 214 of the Planning and Development Act 2005.
Mr De Vos, that's to your satisfaction? Thank you. Councillors, there have been two amendments. Those have been read out, so I won't repeat them for the benefit of those online. Do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Any questions or clarifications? Councillor Ruthin?
Thank you. Looking at the caretaker's cottage relocated transportable diagrams or plans that were provided to us, there is nothing showing about water or power connections or septics. Have they been?
Yes, so I have actually responded to I think you have sent the question in. So the applicant already has an approved septic system on the property. He has got off-grid power, and he has sufficient water tank requirements that meets potable water requirements.
Right, thank you.
I have a question, Madam President.
Certainly, Councillor.
Do we know how many breaches are in play with this transportable building?
One is for doing development without approval.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Pearce?
I listened to the Manager of Planning Development say that they have an approved septic system. How was this approved? They didn't get building approval first. So when did the septic system get approved?
So I have spoken to Sean, our environmental health officer, about it. Sorry, can I just correct that by saying it's either, I think, if I recall correctly, he said that there is an application before him, but it hasn't been finalised yet, so I do apologise about that.
Just to clarify that, is that a retrospective application?
Well, yes, it would be in this instance. Yes, I agree. Yep.
Just clarifying that. So is that two? Is that two breaches now that this person has not followed the committed due to erecting without application, and now
Council could, yes, you could do two. However, I would say that the septics are a type of development which is part of the overall development of a single dwelling on a site, so it's expected. So I would not think it unreasonable to cover it all, but Council could apply both if they wanted to.
Councillor Ruthin?
And we also need development approval for water tanks. So, what's the situation?
Once again, we could consider that as being part of the requirement to have a single dwelling. We have no issue in terms of if Council sees fit to do 3 lots of $500 or 1 lot. I'm happy to look at it. Sorry, Toby. Oh, sorry, he has got the approval for the water tank, sorry.
Sorry, was that he has sought approval? So that's not yet approved either? No, he's got approved for his water tank. He has it approved, okay, thank you. And one other comment, looking at the photographs that we received and the plans, the stairs are not in the same place as what they are in the plans, and neither are some of the windows. Is that an issue?
From a planning perspective, no, but from a building permit perspective, they would need to be, whatever's on the ground would need to be reflected in the approved plans on a building permit.
I just still need clarification.
Councillor Pearce?
I still would like clarification. Were the water tanks in place before an application was made for approval? And secondly, was the septic system in place before the application was made for the septics?
I'll have to take that on notice and get some advice from our environmental health officer.
So just for clarification, once you've got your advice, would then in our resolution, would that be applicable to any of the approvals that have been gained retrospectively?
I will seek advice, or if I could take that on notice. I'm going to get the planning officer, just get the environmental health officer, and we'll sort that out and find out what the situation is.
Thank you, councillor. Any further questions or clarifications? Councillor McCormick, McEwen?
Thank you, Madam President. I've got a problem with the word retrospective in the second line of the officer's recommendation, where council is approving the retrospective development. I don't think that's what we're doing, are we? We're not approving the retrospective development. We're trying to retrospectively approve the development.
Yes. That would be correct.
Okay, so that may need to be changed, but I'm going to object to the retrospective phase anyway. I've got a clarification on retrospective approvals. It's my understanding that we cannot retrospectively approve any planning application. All we can do is approve it from today.
Yes. Yes. The development is already there in place, so we are considering it retrospectively.
Yes, but the Supreme Court has a ruling on this, that you cannot, we can't retrospectively approve anything. If we retrospectively approve, this is a question, if we retrospectively approve this development, what date will that retrospectivity apply to?
Yes, because, yes, no, I see your point.
In
No,
which
so it has
case,
to be-
if it retrospectively applies to when the building was put on the property, we can't fine them because we're giving them retrospective approval. And this was what the Supreme Court, is this not what the Supreme Court found in?
Well, I disagree with that.
I know you might.
I think that there is an allowance under the Act, I think it's might be section 228, that says that we can take the legal or enforcing side of things whilst an application is being applied for. So if someone has actually gone and put a development on there, we can fine them, and then they still have the right to apply for the approval of the development.
I agree with that.
So I don't see there's an issue in fining him.
Are you aware of the Supreme Court decision in the case of Bright Image Dental Proprietary Limited versus the City of Gosnells?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
We're not entering into debate.
No, I just asked a question.
No, thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll come back to that then.
Madam CEO, you wish to raise something?
Oh, Madam Chair, I was wondering if the removal of the word retrospective from where it sits in the, sorry, I'll start again. Perhaps saying approves the retrospective application for development or development application.
May I make a suggestion? Why do we not just remove the word retrospective? Approves the application because the application has come before us, but nevertheless, they have acted prior to the development, which case the fine would apply. How would that?
Yep.
Yep. Maria, would you remove approves the development, the application for development? Thank you. Right. Is that word erroneously hiding anywhere else in that? Yeah. Yes, I think that sounds more concise. Councillor Pearce, would you be happy with that change? Your microphone, please, so we can record.
Could I just read number 6 and again, please? Just
Yes. May I just ask first on, do you accept that change?
I do accept that change.
Okay. And number 6 is request the CEO to direct the administration to issue the maximum fine of $500 per offence committed pursuant to Regulation 42 of the Planning and Development Regulations of 2009 to the applicant for breaching Section 214 of the Planning Development Act of 2005.
Just one point of clarification. When someone puts up an application for development, in that application, does that include septics, water, all those parts of that building, or does it just include the erection of the building?
Ideally, they put all of that information on an application for us. Yep.
So in this case, though,
Councillor McEwen?
it was a question. Yeah. In this case, were there 3 applications or one? Is that what we're trying to find out?
That's what we're trying to find out at the moment.
Right. Thank you.
I have a question, Madam President.
Certainly. Go ahead, Councillor McCormick.
Yeah, due to the fact that in this case, the structure has been located on a title without application to local government planning, can we, or is it already covered, that a licensed building inspector must visit the structure to ensure compliance to the building codes at the expense of the owner, or is that already covered?
That comes under a different process. So that's covered under the building permit process. So they would be required to have a certified application to the Shire. Part of that certification is that they need to have it inspected, and only then, once we're satisfied with the information that's provided, would we sign off on it.
Thanks, Hugo.
Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, so I understand that. So will the same approval process apply for like the bushfire attack level? And the last question I've got is, that's fine question. Yeah, if you maybe answer that one first.
Sorry, just to clarify the earlier question about the septic. So the septics have been approved, and they were approved on the 21st of January this year. And the water tanks were approved on the 15th of June this year. So there's definitely development approvals, environmental health approval for the septics, and a DA approval for the water tanks. Sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, just a question about the BAL. And the last question is the building occupied at the moment?
Yes, the building is occupied.
Has a certificate of occupancy been issued?
That would have to be part of that process under the building permit process that they have to apply for. So no, I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't have that information.
In regards to a certificate of occupancy, it's not actually a requirement in Western Australia to produce that for a house, only for commercial businesses, but yes, he will be required to get a retrospective or building approval certificate.
Just another point of clarification. The water tanks were approved on the 15th of June, but were they erected before the 15th, before the application was presented to the Shire?
No, they weren't.
Thank you, councillors. Any further questions? Any further clarifications? Any objections? In which case this item is carried, 8-0, and thank you very much for your patience. Item 9.2.1, list of payments for July 2022. The officer's recommendation is on page 24. Are there any questions or clarifications? Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Do I have any objections? In which case this item is carried 8-0 under 9.3. Moving to item 9.2.2, the monthly financial statements of July 2022. The officer's recommendation is on page 28. Any questions or clarifications? Councillor McEwen.
No, just one clarification. It's a general clarification, not specific to any line item. But when can we expect the financial statements to be directly produced from Datascape, and when can we expect to have a statement by Nature and Type? Please.
Mrs. Bateman, would you care to respond?
I believe we can prepare at the moment a statement of nature and type. As to it coming directly and correctly from Datascape, we are close to the end of the adjustments needed. So we're working on the last few line items for the nature and type statement. We've still got a bit to go on the rate setting statement.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any further questions or clarifications? Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jury. Do I have any objections? In which case this item is carried. 8-0. Moving to item 9.3.1, the Governance Review Action Plan. Officer's recommendation is on page 31. The officer's recommendation is that Council receives the Governance Review Action Plan final report as attached at attachment 1 to this report, and notes that any outstanding actions will be dealt with by the officers as operational matters. Do I have a mover? Councillor McEwen.
With a small amendment.
Thank you. Would you like to state your amendment?
Yeah, it's just that we're asking admin to deal with outstanding actions. I think admin should report back to us. So on the end of what's written there, could we add the words, and will be reported to council at the next OCM after any outstanding action is taken?
Maria, is it Councillor McEwen who moved that motion? Just bear with us, we're just amending the officer's recommendation. The officer's recommendation now reads that Council receives the Governance Review Action Plan final report as attached at attachment 1 to this report, and notes that any outstanding actions will be dealt with by the officers as operational matters and will be reported to council at the next ordinary council meeting following any action being taken. Do I have any further questions or clarifications?
Yes.
Councillor Hart?
A matter of timing. If an operational matter, if an action is completed 1 day before an OCM, this might present some timing difficulties. I'm not sure how to get around that one.
No, that's okay, yeah.
Councillor McEwen, I can see
Yeah, okay.
deliberation.
I'll just put it,
Would you like to amend that to
I will,
say?
no, yeah, put it, no, change it from the next ordinary council meeting. Will be reported to council by inclusion in the agenda for the next.
What about at the earliest convenience?
No. So if
Within 2 months, councillor?
no, if you put it inclusion in the earliest agenda, perhaps, or just that brings it back to
The next agenda.
yeah, the next agenda. Yeah.
Madam CEO, do you wish
Yeah,
to
can you sort us
add
out?
a little direction here?
Okay, here's a go. At the next, take out what I just said. So it will be reported to council at the next ordinary council meeting.
As soon as practicable,
Yeah, something like
following
that.
any
Yeah, whatever, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah?
I'm sure.
So we just added as soon as practicable,
Yeah,
following
practicable.
any action being taken.
Yeah, that's
Councillor McEwen, are you happy
Yeah,
with
that's
that? Thank you. I will read for those online that council receives the Governance Review Action Plan final report as attached at attachment 1 to this report, and notes that any outstanding actions will be dealt with by officers as operational matters and will be reported to council at the next ordinary council meeting as soon as practicable following any action being taken. That's the officer's recommendation currently on the table. Any further questions or clarifications, councillors? Any objections? This is carried 8-0. Thank you very much. Item 9.3.2, 2J Recreation Centre Management Review. The officer's recommendation is page 36.
Madam President, just to note that we inserted the date 30 November 2022 in part 2 of the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Councillors, are there any questions or clarifications? Do I have a mover? Councillor Pearce? Are there any objections? In which case this item is carried 8-0, under Standing Order 9.3. Item 9.3.3, correspondence from the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. The officer's recommendation is on page 38. Any questions or clarifications? Thank you.
I've just noted that there are many email sent by our finance manager, Mr. Werner. Has there been any correspondence back to the Shire about the differential mining rates?
Mr. Werder has been corresponding closely with the department, so next month you'll receive the sheaf of correspondence that has been happening. We received, as late as this morning, some more questions, or yesterday, some more questions, and have provided a response this morning.
Thank you.
Any further questions or clarifications? Do I have a mover, please, for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Reason. Are there any objections? In which case this item is carried 8-0 under Standing Order 9.3. Item 9.5.1. Recommendation.
Point of order.
Yes, councillor.
I believe there's a 9.3.4. Do we want to discuss it here or later?
Right, thank you. Thank you, councillor. Item 9.3.4, voting delegates. Walgett 2022 Annual General Meeting. The officer's recommendation is that council nominates the Shire President and Deputy Shire President as voting delegates and councillors, and there are 2 spaces for councillors as proxy voting delegates for the Walgett 2022 Annual General Meeting. Therefore, the first question is, are there any nominees for the position of proxy voting delegates for the Walgett Annual General Meeting? Councillor Pearce? Is there a second nominee or just one? Councillor Jury? I will ask councillors present, do you support the 2 nominees, Councillor Pearce and Councillor Jury, as proxy voting delegates for the Walgett 2022 Annual General Meeting? All in favour? No, actually, you're right. I will move it for simplicity, and we will need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Right, all in favour of Councillor Pearce and Councillor Jury as proxy voting delegates? We will do it again. Thank you. You can vote for yourselves, absolutely. So that is unanimous, thank you. 8-0. Now, we move back to the substantive motion, which reads now that Council nominates the Shire President and Deputy Shire President as voting delegates and Councillors Pearce and Jury as proxy voting delegates for the Walgett 2022 Annual General Meeting. Are there any questions or clarifications? Is there a mover? Councillor McEwen, thank you. Are there any objections? In which case this is carried 8-0 under Standing Order 9.3. Moving forward to 9.5.1, recommendation of the Bushfire Advisory Committee meeting held on the 3rd of August 2022. Officer's recommendation is on page 45. Now, there are three recommendations, so we'll take this through, starting with Officers' Recommendation 1, that Council receives the Bushfire Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the meeting held on the 3rd of August. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Jury, thank you. Are there any questions or clarifications? Are there any objections? Thank you, in which case that is carried 8-0. And there's a officer's recommendation. Is this a BVAC one? No, that's BVAC. Excuse me. Thank you. So we're now looking at the Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendation number 1, that Council appoints bushfire control officers as follows. The appointment of Craig Stewart as the Chief Bushfire Control Officer, Nicholas Griggs as the Deputy Chief Bushfire Control Officer number 1, Robert Kosh Sesam as the Deputy Chief Bushfire Control Officer number 2, Charles Roth as Bushfire Control Officer, Gary Forsyth as Bushfire Control Officer, Kim Madrill, Bushfire Control Officer, Ian McGregor, Bushfire Control Officer, Robert Scobie, Bushfire Control Officer, and the following Shire officers as Bushfire Control Officers: A. Ebony Francis, Emergency Management Officer, and B. Greg Warburton, Reserves Management Officer, and C. Leon Cooper, Ranger, and D. Wade McMillan, Ranger. That is the recommendation. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Thank you. Councillor McEwen has moved. Are there any questions or clarifications? Are there any? Thank you. Councillor Ruthin.
Is Robert Scobie the person we know as Grant Scobie? Thank you.
Thank you, people. Any questions or clarifications? No. Any objections? No. That item is carried 8-0. Thank you very much. Then recommendation 2, and there are 2 options. One is the Bushfire Advisory. So what's this?
That's a different recommendation.
But they're both recommendation 2s.
Yeah, that's an office recommendation, the other one's a bushfire.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm with you now. Right, Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendation 2, that Council receives and endorses the Shire of 2J Bushfire Preparedness and Resilience Strategies Report. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you. Councillor Ruthin. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Do I have any objections? In which case that's carried 8-0. Thank you. So then moving on to Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendation number 3. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor McEwen. Any questions or clarifications? Any objections? In which case this is also carried, 8.0. Thank you. I'll just lost track where I am. Then the final resolution is Officer's Recommendation 2. That council approves the extension of time for review of the bushfire operational procedures to the May 2023 meeting of the Bushfire Advisory Committee. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Yes, councillor.
Is this due to staffing constraints, or what is holding up? Because this has been in process for a while now, so what's holding it, or it hasn't been? Perhaps just a bit of clarification on that.
You have to use the microphone.
Thank you. It essentially comes down to workload, keeping in mind there are two other parties in the SESM Memorandum of Understanding that constitute my role. So it's just basically a reflection of that workload, and I advised the CEO ahead of time, rather than leaving it to the last minute, that I didn't feel that original December date was an achievable date.
Can
Okay, thank
add
you.
a little bit to that? The procedures have been updated from time to time in relation to specific items like flashwoods and things, so that's a continuous process. This is a major review of the is this correct?
That is correct. What we're talking about here is a front cover to back cover review, as opposed to as-need reviews. I should add, though, I do expect there to be a as-needed review of some small items to come in the interim before the full review is presented. So there is still work happening in that space to improve it, but in terms of Council's original resolution, which I interpret as a full review, cover to cover, that's what I'm asking to be pushed back.
Thank you, Rob. So did we have a resolution on our books that it was to be done by December? Does that need to be rescinded?
My advice is that no, it doesn't, because this one supersedes that resolution, because you're extending.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or clarifications? Do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Ruthin. Are there any objections? In which case this is also carried. 8-0. Understanding Order 9.3. Moving to item 9.5.2. The LEMAC committee items and recommendations. The officer's recommendation starts on page 55. Just bear with me for one moment. Right, the first office, Local Emergency Management Committee recommendation is that LEMAC meeting times be changed to the second Wednesday of relevant months at 10:30 a.m. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Pearce. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Do I have any objections? Thank you. This is carried 8-0. Unanimously. Moving to recommendation 2, that the LEMAT meeting frequency be reduced to 3 times per year, with meetings to be scheduled early March, June and November. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Jury. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Do I have any objections? In which case this is carried 8-0. Understanding Order 9.3. Moving to Local Emergency Management Committee Recommendation 3, that the alteration of the LEMAT membership structure with the composition of this committee is proposed to be as follows. A, Police Officer in Charge, 2J. 4 elected members, 2 primary, 2 deputy. Community Emergency Services Manager, CESM. Chief Executive Officer of the Shire of 2J, or in accordance with Section 5.10(5) of the Local Government Act of 1995, the CEO's representative. E, the Emergency Management Officer. F, the Department of Communities representative. G, the District Emergency Management Advisor. H, the Local Recovery Coordinator and or Deputy. And I, Welfare Liaison Officer and or Deputy. J, the DFIS District Officer for Avon and or District Officer of Natural Hazards. K, Main Roads Representative. L, St John's Ambulance Community Paramedic. M, Ranger Representative. N, Principal of 2J District High School. 0, non-voting quorum invitees, which would be the Bushfire Control Officer or Deputy, the 2J Volunteer Fire and Rescue Representative, the 2J St John Ambulance Representative, the Morringham St John's Ambulance Representative and the 2J SES Representative. That is the motion as it sits. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Ruthven. Do you have any questions or clarifications?
Yes.
Councillor Councillor Hart first.
Thank you. Just reading the first line of recommendation 3, that alteration of LEMC membership structure with the composition of this committee is proposed to be as follows. Where does that put council in terms of approving those proposed positions?
Thank you. I'll refer through to the CESM, Rob Kosh. Mr. Kosh.
Thank you. I understand the question there. The intent of the recommendation that came out of the LEMC is for council to adopt this new membership structure. So although the recommendation is as LEMC voted, I would support changes to the wording to actually make it more clear that that is the membership we're asking council to endorse from this point forward.
Would you care to perhaps remove the word proposed so that the alteration of LEMAT membership structure with the composition of this committee is to be as follows? Or I'm open to advice.
Madam Chair, if I may, if we could say that council approves the alteration of the LEMAT membership structure with the composition of this committee as follows.
Thank you. Councillors?
Sounds good to me.
Thank you. Councillor Ruthen, do you accept that change?
I do.
Any further questions or clarifications? Councillor McEwen.
Yes, the people listed under A2 O, A to N, I should say.
Sorry, A to...
A to N,
Yes,
they're the voting members, that's correct?
yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So the only problem I've got is that the way that the elected members are listed, it looks like you have to have 4 elected members on the committee, and you don't. You only have to have 2. If we include 4, there's 17 people on the committee, which gives you 1 quorum. If you include 2, which is all that are entitled to attend, that gives you 15 people on the committee, which gives you a different quorum. So I think we need to change 4 elected members to 2 elected members, because that's all we want at the meeting at any one time.
Yes, if I could add some clarification to that. The intent here is that there to be 2 elected members at any given meeting, and the deputies there as proxies when the primary member, elected member, couldn't make it. That's the intent here.
Okay,
In which
so-
case I would support Councillor McEwen's that there are 2 elected members, 2 primary and 2 deputy. Your deputy are only enacted in the absence of a representative.
I'd agree that that's in line with the intent.
Councillor Reardon, would you accept that?
I do.
Right, we now have 2 minor alterations, but nevertheless important. Councillors, are there any further questions or clarifications that have arisen out of this? Are there any objections? In which case, this is also carried 8-0 under Standing Order 9.3. Moving to Local Emergency Management Committee recommendation number 4. That council receives and endorses the Shire of 2J Bushfire Preparedness and Resilience Strategies report. Do I have a mover? Yep, Councillor Reardon, thank you. Are there any questions or clarifications? Are there any? Yes, Councillor Reardon?
Is this necessary, given that we've had a previous motion exactly the same from the BFAC?
Well, this is a recommendation of the LEMC, so it's a different recommendation, I guess, for the same thing, but a recommendation reinforcing so it's council's role to accept or not the recommendations of the committee.
Yep, thank you. I accept that.
Any further questions or clarifications? Any objections? In which case, this is also carried 8-0 under Standing Order 9.3. Moving to Local Emergency Management Committee recommendation number 5. That Council prioritises the following recommendations of the Shire of 2J Bushfire Preparedness and Resilience Strategies report and considers appropriate allocations in its 2022-2023 budget or subsequent budgets as applicable. 1. Report Recommendation 42. The Shire reallocates its primary local recovery coordinator appointments to welfare liaison officers and reassign the responsibilities of local recovery coordinators to 2 or more senior management staff and embed local recovery coordinator responsibilities into position descriptions of these roles. 2. Report Recommendation 43. The Shire embeds emergency management tasks within all employee position descriptions. 3. Report Recommendation 44. The Shire should require all staff to undertake a level of WOLGA emergency management training in line with their expected involvement. That is the motion that's on the table. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Councillor Ruthin?
Regarding point 3, does, or previously, DFES used to run the emergency management training. Do they no longer do that and it's now been moved to Walgett? Or is there an option?
Thank you for the question. Walgett now do the training. They have done since as long as I've been in the role, so about the last 7 years. I'm not sure where the change occurred that you refer to, but it is Walgett that run the emergency management training courses.
Thank you. It's a long time since I did the training when it was done through DVS.
Do I have any questions or clarifications any further? Councillor McEwen?
Yeah, but in the first paragraph, we talk about the 22-23 budget. We've already done that. Maybe we need to change that to something else.
Is it necessary to put the year?
We could do it at the budget review, but maybe we need to do it ad hoc.
As part of the annual budget
Or
process?
something. Just leave that. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, okay. Consider appropriate allocations in future budgets would do.
In future budgets
Yeah.
or
Future budgets and budget reviews, perhaps.
or maybe just
Or appropriate allocations, full stop.
or subsequent budgets?
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
Just remove the date for the words
Future budgets,
future. Yeah.
subsequent is common.
Yep, okay, that's fine.
So, and
Now, does that read? that-
yeah, as long as it reads okay.
I'm just waiting for Maria to catch up with the officer's recommendation. I don't know. It's not unnecessary, maybe superfluous, but... Right. Councillor Pearce, are you happy with that alteration?
Yes, I am.
Right, thank you.
Oops, sorry. In the second, in number 2, the Shire embeds emergency management tasks within all employee position descriptions. Do all employees have tasks with regard to emergency management?
Yes, look, I can answer this one, and I should actually say this recommendation that we're looking at here is actually a subset of the of a similar recommendation that we just went through with the BFAC report. So is a recommendation of Walgett that all Shire employees have it's a little sort of catch, little catch line in their position descriptions that basically say emergency management tasks as directed. This would enable, if we need to open and maintain a recovery centre, that a non-emergency management dedicated person at the Shire could be tapped on the shoulder and said, you've got the graveyard shift in 2 days' time. And it just cements that into the position description. That's the intent there.
Thank you very much.
And okay, well that removes my next question, so that's okay. Thank you.
Right. Any further questions or clarifications? Any objections? In which case this is also carried 8-0. Moving to the last recommendation, which is of the LEMAC, which is that Council notes the appointments of personnel required for the purpose of emergency planning and preparation, response and recovery as follows. 1, the local recovery coordinator, management of infrastructure and assets, the deputy local recovery coordinator, manager of development and regulation, the deputy local recovery coordinator, the manager of corporate and community services, the Welfare Liaison Officer, Kimberly Hardy, the Deputy Welfare Liaison Officer, Toby Prater, the Deputy Welfare Liaison Officer, Wesley Sutton, and the Deputy Welfare Liaison Officer, Narelle Rogers. That's the extent of the recommendation. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Wrench. Any questions or clarifications?
Yes.
Councillor Hart?
The first three positions are addressed by job role. The remaining four are addressed by name. If employees move on, does such moving on have any implications for items 4 to 7?
Through the chair, if I can, it is considered that the three management positions need to be named as their position because they have the authority to A, make decisions and B, purchase in the event of an emergency. The reason that the four people below are named is because they are currently the people who are in relevant roles but also who are local people. So if we had someone who lived in Perth who was the Community Development Officer, for example, we wouldn't necessarily be looking at appointing them to be a welfare officer. It is generally accepted that those officers need to be local people who are available at the drop of a hat, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or clarifications?
Yeah,
Councillor
just following
McEwen.
on from that, so will there be a process in place to advise council immediately we have to change someone?
We would do that through the LEMC.
Yeah, but that only meets 3 times a year.
We would have to call a special meeting.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, okay.
Any further questions or clarifications, councillors? Any objections? No. In which case this item is also carried 8-0. Understanding Order 9.3. The next item is 14.1. Under confidential business. The recommendation is that Council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with section 5.23(2) of the Local Government Act. 14.1, correspondence from Clublinks. This matter is considered to be confidential under section 5.232 C and E of the Local Government Act, and the Council is satisfied that discussion of this matter in an open meeting would, on balance, be contrary to the public interests as it deals with a contract entered into or which may be entered into by the local government and which relates to a matter to be discussed at the meeting and a matter that, if disclosed, would reveal 1, a trade secret, or 2, information that has a commercial value, or 3, information about the business, professional, commercial or financial affairs of a person. Therefore, councillors, I just remind you, if there needs to be any debate on this item, we will need to move behind closed doors. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Wrench, thank you. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Do I have any objections?
Yes,
That's an objection or a question or a clarification?
that's I think it's an objection, so we can move behind closed doors. Yeah.
Right. Councillor, are you proposing that we move behind closed... Are you moving that we move behind closed doors?
Yes.
Madam President, I believe Councillor Wrench has moved the officer recommendation, which is to move behind closed doors.
Oh, yes, of course.
I see what you
Yeah,
mean. Sorry.
yeah.
My
Thank you.
apologies.
The Councillor McEwen, thank you. Do I have a seconder to move behind closed doors? Not necessary if there's no objection. Are there any objections? No. In which case, we will, under 5.2.2, councillor, all in favour to move behind closed doors? Oh, sorry, we've already done that under 9.3.
Morris, would you mind opening the door?
So I need to read out these, I'll need those two motions up so I can read them out to the public. Right. Okay, thank you. Councillors, we need to, because we did not accept the officer's recommendation, it's not, it is substantially different because of the amount. The reason given was that we did not accept the officer's recommendation. Councillor Pearce, would you like to put a reason forward, and then Ms. Shaw foreshadowed?
My reason was that Club Links had responsibility for the water contract as per the management contract, but however there were...
I would keep it very succinct.
Okay. Is that all? Well, to me, if that was the case, we shouldn't pay anything, but I do believe there were underlying circumstances. Yeah, so there were circumstances that equated to this, which...
Put a reason why we didn't vote for the first one.
Yes.
And that can be that we don't think they should.
Beg your pardon?
But that just stop it at Club Links has the responsibility for the management. of the water, as
But
per their
then-
contract.
But then the question is, why did we then do 27,000?
Well, no, but we don't have to answer that. We only have to say why we
I
didn't do
think
that.
you open a hornet's nest there, councillor. I really do. I think you need to have some sort of balance in that. What was... so...
I think I would like to have,
Yep.
there were underlying circumstances that contributed to these
additional costs.
costs.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Maybe you could go back to that reason. Maybe Club Links had the primary responsibility.
Just bear
maybe?
in mind that we're now behind closed. We're in the public realm, councillors, so I think the reason given, we've got 2 reasons in. Yep, okay. Right. We don't need to have a second one we only need 1 reason, Maria, which is for the one that was rejected, not for the one that was carried. So this one here should go to the second position, yes. Thank you. Right. Thank you for anybody who's still online or those who may come to the recording at a later date. And we will just carry through the officer's recommendation, the substantive motion. The substantive motion failed for the reason that although Club Links have the primary responsibility for the management as per their cost, it should, however, due to underlying circumstance, although Club Links have the primary responsibility for the management as per their contract, underlying circumstances contributed to the additional costs. A foreshadowed motion was put, and the council resolution is that council agrees to a one-off payment to Club Links of $27,477.50 to assist with water charges for the 2021-2022 financial year, given that an accurate baseline budget was unable to be determined due to A, the 2021-22 being the first full year of operation of the TRC, B, the establishment of the landscaping required higher than normal irrigation, C, the Shire was paying the water and electricity bills for some time, D, the failure of the bore at the TCRC significantly affected water consumption and skewed readings for the period, and E, the Shire retained control of the irrigation schedule with no input from Club Links. 2, requests the CEO to bring a budget amendment back to Council as part of the mid-year budget review. Voted for was Councillors Madachi, Ruthin, Jury, Hart, Pearce and Wrench. Voted against was Councillors McCormick and McEwen. The motion was carried 6-2 by absolute majority. The next recommendation was that Council requests the CEO to 1, review the management contract for the 2J Recreation Centre and negotiate contract variations with Club Links. 2A, hand over control of the irrigation system at the 2J Recreation Centre subject to an annual key performance indicator regarding the upkeep of the landscaping and playing field, and B, identify and clarify clauses that are inconsistent or ambiguous. 2, notes that the CEO will report back to a council workshop no later than the 30th of November 2022 with details of potential contract variations. 3, investigate the installation of separate utility meters for the aquatic and pavilion dry sports facilities to assist in apportioning costs. And 4, provide a report to Council by the 28th of February 2023 regarding the installation of separate utility meters at the 2J Recreation Centre. Motion was carried by absolute majority, 8-0. I want to thank you very much for your patience. People, next meeting of the Ordinary Council meeting will be held on the 28th of September 2022. There are a number of council meetings that will be falling in the next month, and I advise that you look at the website to see the dates that they will occur, and I will declare the meeting closed at 20 minutes past 4. Thank you very much for your patience and time in attendance.
Thank you.